Meeting of Franklin City Council to order. I ask everyone to please silence your cell phones and join us in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank everybody for coming out this evening. We had no one to sign up for citizens' time. Do I have any amendments to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from the July 9th, 2018 regular schedule meeting. Any corrections or additions to those meeting minutes? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Nays have the same opportunity.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye.
And aye. Motion carries. We also have the special called meeting on July 10th, 2018, called meeting with Southampton County to talk about the courthouse. Any additions or corrections to those meeting minutes? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
So be it.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Nays have the same opportunity.
Aye.
Aye. I was not present.
You can abstain.
You can abstain.
Abstain.
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
And aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We have the department reports that came under separate cover. Does anybody have any questions on those? Comments? I do know it's the time of the year, but there was an extraordinary number of violations for grass. We need to somehow,
It's that time of year.
I understand that, but somehow or another, we need to stay on top of that so we can manage it, because I don't know, with that many, it seems to me that by the time the contractor finished cutting one, it'd be time to cut it again, so.
That's true.
But anyway, that's just
With the rain
an
on
observation. And of course, with the rain coming this week, it's no telling.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go to old and new business. First on the old and new business, is the zoning ordinance amendment initiating resolution number 2018. Do we need to talk about that before we?
Unless there's questions, you reviewed it the last meeting and
Right.
directed that it be placed on the agenda for action tonight.
Everybody recalls what that was?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'll ask.
Can we, before we do that, can we talk about, is this the appropriate time to talk about other things to go to the planning commission, or are we going to do them, we're going to have a discussion with that in the future, or?
Yeah, the
We've
pla-
got,
Go ahead.
we're supposed to be having quarterly meetings with the planning commission. We'll need to get a list to them, so we will have, let's put it on the next agenda
Okay.
Well-
to have, where everybody can kind of come prepared with potential ideas or questions, concerns that we want to put out there to them, give them plenty of time to look at them before our next quarterly meeting.
Well, just to update you, the planning commission's meeting Thursdays, and they're looking at the list that was developed at the work session now. So you'll be getting those, and those will be the topic for your next quarterly meeting in September, if not on the agenda for consideration.
But I'd like for
before-
us to be prepared to have things for them to look at in
If
the
you want
next
other
round- in
things.
the next round.
Okay.
Because I think we are, we want to have that open dialogue like we had with them previously, so. Okay. Is that okay? Mr.
Yes.
Burton? Please make note that we want to put
Yes,
that
sir.
on the agenda for the next, okay?
Point of order. We're having discussion on zoning, and it's not on the agenda. It's on the agenda for zoning ordinance amendment initiating resolution. So we should only be discussing that.
We're getting ready to go right now.
That we broke the order by then.
Right.
Resolution 2018-03
A resolution initiating text amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding the consideration of allowing two-family dwellings in the R2 General Residence Zoning District. Whereas the City Council finds that the public necessity, convenience, general welfare require that the text of Article 11 of the zoning ordinance be amended, and whereas the City Council wishes to refer these proposed amendments to the text of the zoning ordinance in the City of Franklin Planning Commission for public hearing consideration by the Commission and recommendations of the Commission. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council does hereby initiate the following amendments to the text of the zoning ordinance. That Section 8.2 permitted principal uses of Article 8 R-2 General Residence District Use Regulations of the City of Franklin zoning ordinance is hereby amended by the amendment of subsection A to read as follows. A, 1 and 2 family detached dwelling units. Certified copy of this resolution adopted by the City Council at its regular meeting held on the 23rd day of July 2018 signed by the Clerk of City Council.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I would make a motion on Resolution 2018-03.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Nays have the same opportunity.
Aye.
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 And aye. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we have a discussion on the City Council Rules of Procedure discussion. If you recall, we had a couple of things that I suggested that we talk about and consider, and that's all it is at this point in time, is to talk about and consider. So I'll open it up for anyone to talk about it.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I will open up because in reading these, I can't see the need for us to add new rules to our already existing rules to target any particular individual. We've been down this road before unsuccessfully with charter changes. And anybody on this dais that wants to be honest, they will realize that these particular two rules were targeted actions that I participated in. The one rule with the aye or the abstentions, I don't feel as though it would be in good conscience to not be fully informed or have resolutions on any vote that I take that is going to affect my constituents without feeling wholeheartedly. If I don't have all the information on it, or I think I don't have enough information on it, I don't think this body should try to make you say yes or make you say no, because every vote we take has repercussions to our citizens. So I don't think that abstention is necessarily a negative vote. It's just leaving the judgment to those who feel as though they do know all of the details pertaining a particular issue. So I'd like to, and it's my intention to continue to not vote if I don't feel as though I know everything, to make a good, strong vote, not to just go along with the crowd so we look good. What we do affects the citizens. And in some cases, maybe I should have done more homework. Or maybe I've done all the homework I can do and I still haven't come to a conclusion. So that addresses my abstention. In regards to the citizens' time, again, I was brought to my attention that nobody else around in any other communities have they seen this happen, where a council person will address the council from citizens' time. Well, I think that we have done other things that nobody else does, but we do. And to try to alter the city's rules, this body's rules, just to stop an individual from doing something because you don't necessarily agree with it. I don't think that that's reasonable or fair. If a citizen, as we are all citizens prior to our election, and we still retain that right as a citizen, I'm sure I've probably reached my time as it is already, based on our rules, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak. But I think that under normal circumstances, what we say, how we say it, is very much governed on the dais. Well, there are rules during citizens' time, and as long as a council member follows the same rules as any other citizen, I don't see why this body should try to take the rights of a citizen because they've agreed to serve on council. And that's my feelings regarding the two rules that I brought up. They're personal.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any comments?
I just have a question for Attorney Williams. In my research in regards to Robert rules, I read it to say a member has a right to abstain and cannot be compelled to vote. Could you provide some clarification, please?
Yes, ma'am. There are two sections, and I'm looking at Robert's Rules of Order, 9th edition, which is not the most recent edition. I understand there's a 10th edition, but
Okay.
in the 9th edition, in sections 43 and sections 44, speaking about abstaining. An abstention, number one, is considered to be a negative vote because it can't be a positive vote. Therefore, it's basically considered to be a negative vote. If you abstain, you have not actually exercised your prerogative to speak on behalf of your constituents and say, yes, I agree with this, or no, I don't disagree with it. You have basically said, I don't know, so I'm going to abstain, and therefore it's counted as a negative vote.
I disagree with that, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think
He has the floor right now. Thank you.
in addition to that, abstention also should only apply when you actually have a valid conflict of interest, and that is consistent with Virginia law. So if you're a member of council and something is on the agenda that you have a conflict of interest in because you have some involvement in the activity or the property or the people or whatever, and you feel that you should not vote because your vote is biased, then you should abstain from participating in the discussion, and you should also abstain for purposes of voting. Typically in Virginia, under Virginia law, if you have a conflict of interest that's a financial conflict of interest or work-related conflict of interest, you announce that publicly in advance and you actually leave the dais so that the conversation can go forward without you participating, number one, or possibly influencing someone by your mere presence, and to demonstrate to the public that you are truly not going to be involved in any discussions about the matter. That rule extends over even to outside of council so that you don't talk to city employees, you don't talk to fellow members of council if you have the conflict of interest, and so you simply don't participate, you don't vote one way or the other. It's not really an abstention, it's just that you don't participate. So I hope that answers your questions or gives you somewhere to go look for additional information.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
My colleague asked how does that, she referenced Robert's Rule of Order. And she said when she read Robert's Rule of Order, it said that a member can abstain. The city manager, city attorney, he did not refute what she said with Robert's Rule of Order to say that she was wrong. He issued his personal opinions. So I would say that if we are going by Robert's Rule of Order, and my colleague found and can quote where it says that a member has the right to abstain, then the attorney has the responsibility to show where Robert's Rule of Order says that you cannot abstain. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I thought the attorney did reference Robert Rules of Order, 9th edition, but maybe I misheard him.
Yeah, you misheard.
Yeah, I'm dead, right.
I don't think there's any question that one cannot abstain under the Robert's rules. You know, one can abstain, but one can abstain based, as I read it, based on the fact that they were absent from a meeting and did not know what occurred at that meeting, or that they had a declared conflict of interest. I think that's saying that you can abstain under those particular guidelines.
But does it say that's the only guidelines that you can abstain under?
I don't know if it's particular to say only, but
Ms. Copeland, could you tell us where you got your information
Off the internet.
from? I mean, the 10th edition, or what chapter?
This
is it?
just said April 4th, 2013. That's the only reference it had.
So I think before you vote on that, we need to have more clarification.
well, we haven't even called for a question. So as far as voting, you're being a little premature.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, and council, we could come back to the point of order, and that is the council meeting procedures adopted on July 11, 2011. Basically, as a governing body for the city, we have the right to develop laws that are comfortable for our proceedings and having a productive meeting. I see nothing wrong with the procedures. Basically, if you look at that, it gives you enough time to do what's needed, to address anything that's needed. And if you can't do it in that particular time, you don't need to be doing it. Basically, we go through a meeting to handle the business of the city, and we want to do things proper in order that's best to conduct that. So basically, we have the right to administer these and put them in order. Once a council changes and new council members are reelected, that's a new council. So basically, what we did with another council, it's a carryover, but the new council can tweak, adjust laws and procedures to meet the necessary responsibilities of the council and the people. I think all that we have here, basically, if we look at the 5, is to move forward with progress for the city and for our citizens in their best benefit. I don't think we're singling out anyone or anybody. It's just like oil in a machine. If something's wrong, then you tweak it to make sure it works properly. So I don't see anything wrong with this. I think we should move forward and get it administered as soon as possible.
For clarification, is he for going with the 5 that we have because it's working? Or is he for, he used the word tweaking, adding the new changes? Because I know that it was Mr. Johnson who went to Richmond in opposition to the charter changes that were targeted individually. Now, if you can share with me any other member of this body who this rule would reference because it has happened. You don't need to make laws for things that don't happen. So if you can say.
Now, I'm speaking about the 5 here
Oh, so-
on this card.
Okay.
So basically, what was done in the past is history. We're dealing with the present now
So do you want to keep the 5?
to deal.
I'm trying to understand you. Do you want to keep the 5 as we are, or do you want to add these new rules?
As a council, we can keep the 5 and we can add new rules as we see fit. There's nothing written in stone that we cannot do that.
Well, that's what I was asking, because you don't,
Well, we haven't called for any kind of question, so, asking him how he's going to vote on something.
I'm not asking how he's.
Well, you're asking him what his opinion is on this, and he has a right not to give that to you.
Just like, you don't
And
have
I'm
to-
not,
Okay.
I'm not addressing that.
Anybody else have anything to say?
Mr. Mayor, I never noticed before, but if you look at these 5, since he brought them up, and you look at the very last one, we're not really adopting a new rule, we're just prioritizing or restating that we want to do that, because it's been a rule since 2011. The very last one says, no questions or comments are allowed during citizens' time by members of council, which is what, it doesn't say by members of council, but that's what this whole thing is about.
Yes.
So what are we tweaking?
We're just adding clarity to it, I think, to make
Yes.
sure that people understand.
Yep.
In what form? I'm a little lost. Because the 2 that we were under discussion are about abstentions and about a council person speaking from citizens' time.
Well, if you just, what Mr. Burgess just read for you said the council meeting procedures adopted July 11th, 2011. The last one, bullet 5, says that no questions or comments are allowed during citizens' time. So if you read that, comments, doesn't matter whether it's from us up here or from us down there, they're not allowed. All we're doing is just adding clarity to that to say definitively that, one who sits on the dais cannot or should not go down and do that. It's just, adding, like we said, it's adding clarity to something that's already here. The abstention piece of it is one in which, and we're not trying to force anyone to vote on anything. If you don't have enough information, you can vote nay, or quite honestly, we ought not be calling for any kind of question unless people, until we have had to do amount of time to get to do our homework and see. The other thing is, when we talk about putting things on the agenda, and I want to reiterate this, we put the agenda together on Tuesday afternoon around 3 o'clock for the meeting that's going to happen the next Monday. If anyone wants to add anything to the agenda, if the agenda time is there for it, we add it. If not, we usually get back and say, won't fit on this agenda, but we'll put it on the next agenda. And I think everybody understands that process. That can either go to the city manager or it can come to me personally. And because we do sit down and develop the agenda for the upcoming meeting in advance so that everybody can get their packets on Thursday, which is the targeted date, to give everyone ample time to read and do what needs to be done. So, that's, and we also have opportunities on the dais to bring up issues, either through amending the agenda if we need to. I mean, the processes are there. We just need to follow the processes and procedures, and that's kind of where my head is now. Having said that, they were my suggestion. We need to be and embrace this as a council, okay? Not just because the mayor says we're going to do it this way. We're a team here. We're going to work as a team here, and we have to make sure everybody is on the same page with where we're going and what we're doing. So that's the premise and the genesis behind all this, and that's what we want. So the purpose tonight was to have a discussion about it. You know, if council wants to take action tonight, they can take action. If they don't want to take action, they don't have to take it. You know, where we said is more of a discussion, like the agenda says.
Mr. Mayor, I think that in the spirit of discussion, I think that we pointed out that the only two rules that we're addressing, the team doesn't have a problem. Just one of the members of the team
Well, no.
does something that's not necessarily comfortable. He's not breaking any rules, but because it's not comfortable, 6 of the team could be Christians and 1 of the teams is Muslims. They just believe differently. But does that mean the whole team has to change the rules so that everybody has to be the same in what they believe in?
People are entitled to vote their conscience.
That's true.
How
But
they
when
want to vote.
you target an individual with your rules, and this has happened in the past, and Mr. Johnson knows it. He was a part of the General Assembly when it was told to us, and this is happening again. If this was about because 2 or 3 members were going down to the dais and speaking from citizens' time, it might have warrant to discuss if we wanted to do it. But this has only been 1. That 1 happened to be the one who had the largest margin of election in this last election, which doesn't make a difference. Elected is elected. But for council opposed to mayor.
Okay.
But that's the only one. So when you change this rule, you're only doing it to affect one person's actions.
We're not changing the rule,
Well,
as
are
I
you
said.
adding
We
this
are
new-
clarifying the rule.
Well, when you add this
And it's
new
not
rule-
really a rule, it's a procedure.
when
It's a
you add this
process and
procedure, You are
procedure.
discriminating against one individual.
You are certainly entitled to your thoughts on that. Is there any action that council would like to take tonight, or would?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think we should take action because basically it's just some procedures that are needed and we need to clarify on these so there's no question as to what it is we need to do. And I think the only way to do that is to vote upon it.
Question?
My main question is, if I'm here and feel like I want to abstain, if I'm abstaining for a reason, as you said, Robert's Rules of Order, if I have a reason for abstaining, I would need to make my reason publicly as to why I'm abstaining.
You have that option. If you would like for the minutes to reflect why you're abstaining, you have that opportunity.
I'm just saying if a person, a yay and a nay, or aye, if you got a reason you can't, or don't feel you should vote either way, not because you don't have the knowledge of what's going on in the situation, but it might be something you might not be able to disclose. I'm not saying I do, just saying,
Right.
what if?
But if you have a conflict of
That
interest.
would
You would just
qualify as
Okay.
a conflict, I think.
That's
But I
an
think at
addition-
that point, you'd want to recuse yourself and leave the
Right.
room.
Okay.
That's an additional reason why abstention exists. For many
But
reasons.
I go along with that, but I do feel as a council person, we're set here to make a decision one way or the other. So that's,
Okay,
yes or no. So, but that was my question.
okay.
One point, and not to get into debate, because I'm not involved, but just to respond to that, one procedure or rule, or it's in the code, I guess, is you have to have 4 votes. So if less than 4 vote favorably, it fails. If you have 3 voting for something and everyone else abstained, it's going to fail. So that's why I think the city attorney was referencing, it has the effect of a no vote.
I can appreciate it.
So just for clarity, I just wanted to throw that into the discussion.
Which I concur with that.
Okay. All right, anybody else have anything to say? I think if you want to vote on it, I think there's a motion out there. Somebody-
Yes.
that was, it's one that was provided. Somebody want to make that motion formally?
And so be it.
The motion being, can I read?
Yes, please.
I move that the council adopt the following 2 rules of procedure for council meetings, and this is in addition to the ones that were already there, and one of them for clarity. Unless a council member, number 1, unless a council member is absent from a meeting or has a declared conflict of interest, she or he should vote yea or nay on motions when the question is called. And because members of council have the opportunity to speak on various subjects in their capacity as a member of council and from the dais, members of the council should not speak at citizens' time podium during citizens' time, which clarifies the number 5. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second it.
I have a motion and
Bring it to a vote.
I have a second. Any other discussion before we call for the question?
I'm going to have to say that I have, as calmly and rationally as I could, explained why I don't think we should be adopting procedures that are obviously targeted to one individual. That does a disservice to the citizens that we were elected to represent. It shows personal bias towards a team member, and it also puts us into a situation of potential legal matters as with the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union.
Okay,
And
we
if
understand.
they want to take that risk, fine.
We understand that threat. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor of said motion signify by saying aye. Nays have the same opportunity.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye.
And aye, motion carries. So we will add these 2, one for clarity, and then add the other one to our list. And we will follow those as a team. So thank you very much. And thank everybody for their
And I would like to make one clarification. The thing that Mr. McLemore referenced at the General Assembly was not targeted at any one person, if he goes back and thinks about it, or 2 people. It was actually targeted at anybody that was elected, that the citizens of his ward or her ward could actually get a petition and come and have them taken out of office if they didn't like the way they were being represented. That was the whole crux of what went in front of the General Assembly, and it was written and formulated exactly as the city of Portsmouth and other cities have had their rules set up.
Mr.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I think I should have the opportunity to rebut his comment since it mentioned me.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
We're fine. We're
Well, I
fine.
think y'all, I think you're
He's had
lying.
more talking all
I
the
think y'all are liars and corrupt.
Well, you're certainly entitled to your opinion, Mr.
This is
McLemore.
the
and-
most corrupt council I think I've ever can imagine.
Well,
If it wasn't for my constituents, I certainly wouldn't participate in it. It's corrupt.
Thank you very much for those opinions. We certainly appreciate them. We will now get into the city manager's report. Mr. Martin?
Okay. I sent some information out, just to remind you that tonight in closed session, you'll be discussing board and commission assignments. I gave you a draft, and that's all it is, of what the current assignments are, based on the current membership. But there's no obligation for the council to approve them or in that manner or change them in any way you see fit. Also did want to report that the Riverview Walk state grant application for the property recently acquired along the river has been submitted to the state for the Phase 1, and we'll keep you up to date on how that progresses. It was done consistent with the CIP plan and the discussions that the council had during the budget process. Lastly, the electric utility meter reading and billing assessment, the consultant doing the independent analysis is on the site again this week to complete their field work. We anticipate they'll complete that this week, and our expectation is them to get the report back to us as soon as possible so that it can be shared with council during one of the August meetings. In addition to that, I did want to make the council aware we will also share other information. The directors put together the averages for the entire fiscal year, the average consumption, and how that compares to prior years. So we'll be providing that information. And thirdly, I've asked the staff to put together an update, and they've given me information already to analyze the extended payment plan that the council approved up to 7 months for customers in response to the extraordinary month utility bill we had last winter during the coldest month on record and the highest usage on record. We've started analyzing that data, and we'll give an update to council. Those payment plans for most of the customers will expire in September, and all of them will have expired by October. And yet we're going to give you an update on how many have already paid out the plan. And just to give an example, how many still have an outstanding balance and so on. We'll be giving an update of that to council as well at the same time. And hopefully that'll guide us as you look at future decisions with that information in mind. So that's what I have to report tonight, unless I have questions.
Okay. Any questions? I do think it's really, really important that we get that report from them as soon as we possibly can. I understand that, that it's just that, citizens are waiting, I'm sure, and we're waiting. And so we need to, if we need to light a little bit of a fire, please light a little bit of a fire to get that report as soon as practical.
Yes, sir. I think the director's already had that discussion with the contractors, so I fully expect it to be completed.
As long as it involves cookies, I'm sure we'll get it done.
I'll give you 2 dozen. 2 dozen, get it done.
He's got a specific request now.
Okay?
He's up the ante on us.
He wants 3 dozen.
All right.
Okay.
That's all
Anybody
I
have any questions, city manager? Okay. Council staff reports on boards and commissions. Anybody have anything?
Good. We had the HR, TPO, and PDC meetings. I was elected on the Personnel Committee again, which is fine for both of them. They're having a meeting which the mayor hopefully is going to be able to attend for me on the August the 29th, because I have some business obligations I have to attend to, where I'll be meeting with the legislators. One thing that came up that was interesting was that if new legislation comes out where they're going to enact that there's an internet sales tax on items, that it's collected and it'd be congressional or the state, then there's some language that's in the existing fuel tax with the smart scale, and correct me if I'm wrong, please.
You're on track.
Good deal. That it would no longer be there, and it would be reversed and taken out, and we wouldn't be getting it.
Right.
So we need to kind of push our legislators, if you will, to push to keep that language out of get the language out of that, so that we can continue getting the tax that we need to do to roads. And that was the big thing.
Explain that one more time.
There's language in the current smart scale legislature that says that if Congress passes the internet sales tax, which, as we all know, is growing by leaps and bounds, that the fuel tax will no longer be there, and we will not be getting a share of that for our roads.
So who is taking?
It's going to be our, we got to
is the
talk to
federal
our
taking
state.
the
We
tax?
got to talk about the state, making sure it's kept in.
No, what would happen, as I understand it, is, as he just pointed out, it would be replaced by the internet sales if there's a revenue distribution. But the problem that some of the legislators are concerned about is that dollar's expectation is well below what's
Right.
currently coming for roads. So there'll be a big gap. And there's no assurance that the feds would give it to us like they do, for example, cable, where they took over the franchises and the revenues, and they're distributing them back through the states. We don't know how that distribution formula, if there is one, would be done. So as pointed out, Senator Wagner is on it, and he's going to try to have something for clarification in the next session. try to address this
So
disparity.
they're gonna
And
do
they're
away
gonna
with the
send
fuel
a-
tax and put in place the internet sales tax.
Right, well, that's
Yes.
grossly lower.
Yeah, and if you recall, they just put in the floor for
Exactly.
the fuel sales tax,
Mm-hmm.
which gave us more funds, which was really, if you looked potentially at where the funds were gonna come from for the next 20 years for the road improvements that are in the long-term plan. So that could have a significant impact on our roads from an infrastructure standpoint.
Correct.
As we move forward.
Now, they're supposed to be sending out, or putting together a letter from HRTPO, if I understood right, and that they will be sending to each of us for support of doing it. But we asked us all to please talk to our legislators in the state to make sure they do what's necessary to support it. Right.
So it's better if the state does something versus the federal.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's what it
So-
boils down to.
So that was the big thing that came out, you've been to a meeting, I'm sure, on it
Yes,
too, but
yes.
that's the big thing that came out of there that we need to be aware of as a locality.
And to add to that, last week in Richmond, we had a discussion on that with the policy committee, and we're putting together some recommendations through VML. So basically, we can keep that intact with Senator Wagner's bill, that we can prosper from that. So basically, well, not only that one, but there's another one, basically, which is Airbnb, which is where you can rent your house out and so forth. And some of the houses that are being rented out, the owners are making $1,000 a week, more so than having a 12-month lease. And what Airbnb is trying to do, basically, is bypass the localities, which is the council, and basically go straight to the legislature to get them to approve that they will pay the taxes getting from their clientele. They will pay the taxes and bypass the localities. And the problem we have with that is we have no way of finding out who their clients are. And Airbnb don't want us to find out who their clients are, so we can't go back and get back taxes from them. So what we put together is basically an initiative to where we're asking the governor not to pass that bill for Airbnb and put it back in the localities, because there are several localities in Northern Virginia that already have rules and regulations governing Airbnb. What that would do, that would take the money, in Virginia Beach, that would take the money from them, and it would go to the state. Then the state may or may not give the amount of money back to the localities. So that cuts the localities out altogether. So that's a bad bill. So in the next General Assembly, we'll have them so they will not do that.
Good.
And I think the other one was, well, basically, the state and federal government will get money back, more money back this year, basically. And what has been happening for the last 10 years, this was with the Finance Committee that we worked on. The state for the last 10 years have been cutting back on giving the localities money for the school system, school district. So basically, what the proposal that we're going to do when they get the money in October, we're going to propose that the state give the money to the school system divisions, basically, because they'll have a large amount more than they predicted over, well, it'll be a large amount. It's over 500,000. It'll be in the millions, basically, that they're getting back that they didn't project in their financial forecast before. So basically, that'll be a good thing for us, because when we give money to the school division, it takes away from other aspects of fixing streets, et cetera, and so forth. So we're trying to, through VML, change that where the localities will get funds back for the schools to take the burden off the localities. So that was some of the things that we discussed in Richmond at the, also the Institute. And we discussed also Conflict of Interest Act for elected officials and so forth. But I'll get you that information later.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm sure we'll.
Bottom line is, there's a couple of things we need to make sure
Well, we need to be
stay on
keeping
top of
keeping
things.
our-
and talk with the
Didn't the
legislature.
new Supreme Court ruling that came out with
Yeah, that's what
South
stirred this up.
South Dakota versus Wayfair gave the states more money?
No, that clarified that you can collect it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's going to give them more money.
And that's what's triggered this discussion. Now it's a money grab potentially between the federal and the state governments for that money.
But in the SMART scale, which is the part we're getting for the roads, there's language in there that says that it will do away with the fuel tax. And the
Replace it.
concern is we will not be getting more money.
Is that a federal law or a state law?
State.
Smart scale.
State.
State law.
But if yeah.
But if the feds pass the rule that you can collect the internet tax, it's saying that you probably won't get as much. And therefore, we're going to be hurting on the roads, which we're already hurting on, but it'd be worse.
Okay.
Why would I hate to drone on, but why would the state want to take our money away from our roads when we already have bad roads?
They don't want to,
It's
that's
gonna
the
be less
problem.
money. It's gonna be less
There's
money.
verbiage in there that will automatically do it. And what the state, what Wagner and them want to do is to eliminate that language so that we won't be getting less money.
Yeah, I think it
Right.
was a compromise language that went into the legislation when they adopted the this local tax, because there was a lot of folks that were opposed to having any tax increase. And this was a compromise saying, well, if we get this windfall in the future of internet sales money, we'll take this out and put it towards the roads. Well, now we're getting, because of that legal decision, it's more of a reality, but the estimates on the dollars are hundreds of millions less than what is currently being collected. And as the mayor pointed out, the new gas cap floor, I guess it was the floor, we've been losing money since gas prices have been depressed. So this would ensure we'd get what was expected to pay the debt, because that's the big concern, is all this new debt's gonna be entered into. So they gotta ensure that adequate revenues is coming to pay for it.
Several
And
hundred.
as you know, unless it's like Amazon or somebody that collects it, you're supposed to put it on your state income tax return, and I don't have one client yet that's ever bought anything from the internet. Have you?
Not many. But you know, that's the state of Virginia's fault, because North
Exactly.
Carolina automatically gets an amount.
Exactly.
I don't know why they haven't passed it.
I don't either, but you know what I'm saying.
I do.
Okay.
Okay, other boards and commissions, things you got anything?
Yeah, I have two. We have a meeting day after tomorrow to interview attorneys to assist us with legal documents on the water and sewer process that we're going through. In case we get down the road and we're going to do something, we have that in place. And then we had a business center meeting on Wednesday of last week. We admitted 2 new businesses. One of them is called Caregiver on Wheels, and it's providing transportation to where we have transportation for folks who are having a hard time getting around. This is a private pay, and we'll take folks around that are housebound and get them to where they need to go. And the other one was Life Links, and I think this is a very interesting concept, is they're going to come in and train family caregivers on what they need to do and how they do and where resources are. So you got all these people that are training caregivers to go into the home, but nobody's really training the family members that are doing it, and I think that's a huge need that I think will be filled with that. So I'm excited to see how they do. That brings that before those 2 go in, though, we were at 69% occupancy, so we're still hanging in there.
That's good. That's good. That's real good.
Mr. Chair, if I could talk about SIPSA. We have a SIPSA meeting this Wednesday. It'll be the first meeting of this new fiscal year, and I expect that they are going to give a fairly glowing report as to how they finished this past year. As you know, we're debt-free at this point, so that's a big plus. There are negotiations going on right now as to how to dispose of our waste so that we're not putting waste into the landfill, but putting a reduced volume, basically from ash. And so we're hoping that that's going to work out here soon. The leachate problem that surfaced about this time last year has been about 95% resolved and should have it all resolved by the end of August and come out from underneath all of the DEQ notice of violations that we have. And so I'm just feeling pretty good about SIPS at this point and just wanted to pass on that information.
Good. Good to hear good news on the SIPSA side. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Real quick, in 2 minutes or less. Is everybody on an even par now with their payments? There's no sweet deals for other localities? We're all even now?
Yeah, the only, I wouldn't necessarily call it a sweet deal, because I was actually the chair of the committee that created the host agreement between SIPSA and Suffolk. So there is a host agreement that requires SIPSA to pay Suffolk X number of dollars per ton. Once they get above a certain volume, we pay X dollars per ton. It was $4 per ton to SIPSA as a host agreement, but that's built into the entire financial structure, so it won't be an add-on. It's already being calculated.
But Suffolk is paying the tipping fee.
Suffolk is paying the full tipping fee,
So is Virginia Beach.
Yeah, and nationally, that's the way it's normally done.
Yeah.
Is you pay a small host fee for them having the site, not give them their full tipping fee.
I have two quick questions for Mr. Williams. One is, Mr. Williams, the municipal solid waste that was sitting on the docks of China or whatever, have we figured that out, or what to do with that and how to?
Yeah, I think if I could answer them one at a time, it
Yes,
helps my
yes.
memory. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I think that what you're referring to is the plastics.
Correct, correct.
Recyclables, yeah.
That China has shipped overseas. I think, once again, the situation, at least as far as recyclable paper, the American industries have realized there's an opportunity, and so the American industries are at least jumping on recyclable paper and using it for purposes in this country, taking advantage of that at this particular time. My understanding is I think when I last mentioned this, where there was some concern about the recycle company from the beach area or Hampton Roads area potentially having to declare bankruptcy. But in the last book that I just got today and read today so that I would be prepared for the meeting on Wednesday, it seems like that company is holding its own at this point, so I assume they are taking some measures to make their plastics clearer. The problem was there was too much trash being included in the plastic that was being shipped to China, so hopefully they are modifying what needs to be done so they can ship a better product to China, and China will take care of it and use it. The conventional thought is China has to have our recyclable plastic. So it may be a little bit of a down dip in the commodity market at this time, but the long term still looks to be pretty good for China to accept the product. So,
Okay.
second question, I'm sorry.
Okay. I guess question or observation. That is, you mentioned the ash, which is normally about 10% left over going into the landfill.
Right.
And to lengthen the life of the landfill, have we came up with any alternatives like taking the 10% ash and contact some asphalt companies basically to where they can make asphalt from that, or some other companies, other than just having the 10% sitting around or dumped back into our landfill, which shortens the life of the landfill.
Right. Actually, in this instance, because the volume of trash that's being burned, for instance, and I'm just kind of speaking off the top of my head here, looking at the statistics through Wheelabrator that were in the book today, it looked like about 56,000 tons of sips of trash were accepted by Wheelabrator. They burned all that down to generate steam for the Navy and electricity that goes on the grid.
Okay.
But the ash that was left over was about 27%, and I'm thinking, help me with some math here, somebody, that was like 14,000 tons of ash. So instead of putting 55,000 tons into the landfill, we only put like 14,000 tons of ash. Ash does make a good cover. The problem with ash is that it's kind of corrosive and it's hard on the equipment. So we do fight a battle trying to keep the equipment up to standards because of the corrosiveness. But the projection is right now that the landfill, under these circumstances that we have today, that landfill will last to somewhere in the early 2030s. Which is a pretty good time considering some recent circumstances, concerns about the length of the landfill. And additionally, SIPSA has now cleared all the hurdles to build a new Cell 7, which, if that Cell 7 is built and the same circumstances continue, it would be, I think the projection is somewhere in the 2040s, late 2040s,
Okay.
maybe early 2050s, before it would be necessary to try to construct another landfill. And the conventional wisdom is by that time we would have solved our trash situation through other means.
Okay.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
I do know there was a medical waste burning place in South Norfolk at one time,
Okay.
and 5 tractor trailer loads filled would burn down to a low boy number.
Okay, good, good.
It really gets it down.
Yeah.
All right.
That's great.
Just a couple of things. We have shared services coming up on Wednesday with Southampton County. Meeting here, right, Mr.
Yes.
Morris? And then we have, remind everybody about the cruise-in. Cruise-in last week had over 125 cars, I believe. Farmers Market had really excellent participation. I think things are really picking up there, and as well as the We Be Jamming. So there are a lot of activities going on, downtown. So that's a very positive thing, and we just encourage people to go out and participate and partake and have fun. Anything else from anybody? All right. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
I move that the Franklin City Council meet in closed session to discuss appointments to boards and commissions and to discuss the performance and evaluation of employees pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Nays have the same opportunity.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And aye. Motion carries. We'll be going into closed session. Thank everybody for coming.